best city in the world. Been to most of them in Canada, and this is it.
I love Montreal. I love it. It's a great city.
Quality of life is fantastic.
I haven't found any place that's exciting to be in, and it's interesting, and has such good food.
They're moving away from Montreal, away from Quebec, away from the tension between English and French.
After a time, you just get worn down. You get just tired of hearing the same garbage, the same crap on the news every day, the same silly political games going on.
Just tired of waking up every morning to it on the news, in the newspapers, over and over, without it ever finishing.
I have always been proud to be a Montrealer. I think it's the most beautiful city in Canada. And not to mention, this is my home, and I've lived here all my life.
Eric has asked his employers to transfer him to Ottawa, where Rosa will pursue her career as a freelance journalist.
I'm sad that it's come to this pass.
Both Rose and I have always felt sort of, well, no, we're not going to give in. We're really not going to give in. All these other people have, but we're die hard. We're going to stick around. And here we go, huh?
It's been a massive exodus. In 20 years, 300,000 English-speaking people have left Montreal, left Quebec. It's one of the great migrations of Canadian history. As the exodus continues and Montreal becomes more and more French, it's hard to believe that there was once a time when this city had more English-speaking citizens than French, a time when the mayor was English, and a time when English Montreal had its own team in the NHL, the Maroons, a team that defeated Les Canadiens and won the Stanley Cup. French signs outside English stores. It's the law here, and the symbolism of this law has done much to speed up the exodus toward Ontario and the West. Nowhere else in the free world are people forbidden to use their own language on their signs. January 1989. Anglophones have gathered to protest Bill 178, the sign law that creates a mask to hide the true face of multilingual Montreal.
Defy the law. It's an immoral law, and therefore there's no compunction to follow the law.
The crowd is being urged to practice civil disobedience. But very few will do this. Law-breaking does not come easily to middle-class Anglos, who are, above all, polite.
The main purpose of the sign law is to preserve Quebec's French face. The government wants to send a clear message to all the immigrants coming to Quebec, to let them know that even though they're coming to North America, they're coming to Quebec, which is a French province, and French is the official language. That's
Ludmilla de Fougerolles is head of the Commission for the Protection of the French Language, which can take stubborn Anglos to court.
We are very liberal in the way we interpret the law. We are very patient. We take a lot of time. We try and persuade people to comply with the law.
Hot Bengal chutney, bachelor's marrowfat peas. Good old British products on sale here in Montreal West, where the language police have been frequent visitors. They're particularly offended by a sign in which George Davies welcomes his customers in Welsh. This is definitely not French, and the government wants it obfuscated or obliterated. And that's not all.
These also are some of the letters that I've received from the Régie de la Langue stating that certain words, English words, have to be covered. Free parking, customers only, violations towed away, no parking, beef, Davies Brothers, purveyors of fine foods, got lots of them, fresh fish, closed, please use other door. This is one of the things that I was asked to please cover up by the Régie de la Langue because of it being unilingual English. So I took a piece of 1-inch masking tape, as you can see, I've covered it, and apparently now everything is fine. They're quite happy that it's covered, so I don't understand it.
Foreigners find all this a comic opera. But many Montreal Anglophones are bewildered, angered, frightened. They see it as a deep desire by the French for all Anglos to become invisible, to vanish. And many have been quite willing to vanish, by their thousands. At McGill, many Anglophone students are completely bilingual. But there's a belief that that's not quite enough. That it's very hard to get a good job in Montreal if your family name happens not to be French.
I'm basically an Anglophone, so I think I will probably go to Ontario to find a job.
Probably Ontario and New Brunswick.
Hopefully Vancouver.
Vancouver's a nice city. I'm considering going out there.
Do you think you're going to be staying in Montreal after you finish your studies?
No.
What does this mean for English Montreal?
Close friends.
Will it become a community without young people, without children? A community of the elderly and the aged?
I have a lot of trouble with French.
I feel as if I'm being forced to speak it. I'm being forced to integrate within the French culture and be a Québécois.
As Montreal celebrated its 350th birthday, more scars were appearing on the face of the city. Downtown, economic decay in the old Anglo areas. Buildings demolished, but not replaced. Could this be an omen of things to come? In the next century, could the English-speaking element here dwindle to almost nothing, leaving Montreal completely French? It's a notion that would have astonished a man like William Dow. Back in the 1860s, Mr. Dow owned a big brewery, and the people who worked for him jolly well worked in English. The Montreal world of Mr. G. Parrish Ogden was entirely English, and so was that of Colonel Dyde and Mr. Babbage, Master H. Montague Allen and Master Bryce Allen, who lived in a house with 14 servants, most of them imported from England. It was the legendary Square Mile, stretching from Dorchester Boulevard to the slope of Mount Royal. By the end of the 19th century, the men who lived here controlled 3/4 of the wealth of Canada. Mrs. Gibb resided in the Square Mile, and Mrs. Taverner, and Miss Legg, and Miss G.F. Murray, who was always being asked to dance. St. Andrew's Ball. Since 1843, the highlight of Montreal's social season, a frolic for the rich. As they danced until dawn, they could never have dreamed that there would come a day at a future St. Andrew's Ball when their descendants would be part of a nervous minority because the language they spoke was English. But still, the old traditions are bravely upheld. They've brought the haggis to the guest of honor, the Earl of Errol, who's come over from Scotland to stab it with his ancestral dirk.
His knife, see rustic labour dicht, and cut ye up, we're ready slecht. Frenching your gushy entrails, brecht. rich.
Donald Smith, another Scot, was certainly rich. In his house in the Square Mile, there were Raphaels and Titians on the wall. And here, over the years, he entertained 12 earls, 8 dukes, and 6 viscounts. But only a small fraction of Montreal's Anglos lived in the Square Mile. Many thousands more lived well down the hill, in Point St. Charles, Griffintown, Goose Village. Large families slept and ate in a single small room. There was no running water, no toilets inside. Disease was rampant, and the infant mortality rate was among the highest in the world. Children who lived here often worked in factories 12 hours a day. Dock workers and other laborers earned wages that were among the lowest in North America. Quebecois mythology holds that the English grew rich by exploiting the French. But those old robber barons up on the hill were all equal opportunity employers, quite happy to exploit their fellow Anglos as well as the French.
The student got really pissed off at me and he said, "You know, Eric, you Anglos, for 300 years you've been exploiting us. I'm 35 years old, give me a break, you know? I personally exploited you for 300 years? How do you figure this out?"
We were English, but we didn't entirely think of ourselves as English and French. That really wasn't the way it was divided.
Graham de Carey, professor of history.
A really deep resentment of the rich English, because the way Quebec has traditionally operated, the rich English and the rich French ran it between them, and the rest of us were expected to follow behind.
A common misconception here in Montreal and Quebec is that most of the homeless and poor are not Anglophone. That's very, very false. Many, many Anglophones come here.
Jerry Lafferty runs St. Michael's Mission downtown.
Thank you.
It's often said that Montreal Anglos, when they criticize Quebecois nationalism, want to go back to the good old days, when the greedy English dominated the French. But for most Anglos, those bygone days weren't all that good.
We had one man, his little daughter died. She was about 3 or 4 years of age, and he couldn't afford to bury her. He cost $25 for a coffin, and he couldn't afford it. So he came over to us, and me and a little Irish guy, we stayed till 3 o'clock in the morning. We made a beautiful little coffin out of white pine.
We were as poor as anyone in the neighborhood. The curious thing was that in school we were taught that because we were English, we had a superior business sense. It never occurred to us to wonder why, if we were so damn smart, we were living with all those poor French people.